All right, thank you, Paige, and great to see everybody on this rainy August morning. Have you ever seen Missouri so green in August? It's kind of amazing, right? Like I haven't had to water my lawn or do anything like that, you know? Just, it's pretty green. It's beautiful. Excellent. Well, we're starting a new series today. It'll run 6 or 7 weeks called Original Blessing. And we're going to be looking at Genesis 1 and 2. Be looking at themes like creativity, spirituality, rest. Any of you need any of that? Rest. We'll be looking at things like God's image and creation care, environmental stewardship, those kinds of topics. So I love this topic, and I think we'll have a good time as we go through it. You know, as a pastor over the last 40 years or more, one of the things that happens often is I will have parents bring me their children with the questions that they can't answer. Now, the trick of that is that kids always ask the toughest questions, like the ones that stump even theologians. So I never have great answers. But one of the most frequent one was like, you know, talking about creation. You always talk about creation, Genesis 1 and 2. It's a popular thing in children's classes like that. And so some parent will bring their kid in and like the question that the child asks is, Fred, where did God come from? I'll just throw it back on you. Where did God come from? Anybody got a good answer for that one? You got an hour-long answer, and you can. Debate. Okay. Well, yeah. Now that's a whole different. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So you're kind of like going, well, Timmy, God's always existed, and that just solves everything, right? I mean, okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. So it's a challenging question. Now, I love science, and I have read scientists my whole life, and I've read a lot of atheist scientists. And so just because I love science, I'm always trying to integrate science and faith, God and evolution and all these kinds of ideas. And I've done that my whole life. And I've often thought, like, well, what if I was an atheist parent raising my child on, let's say, like the Big Bang Theory or something like that? And let's just pretend that, you know, you're raising your kids on that theory, and your kid, you know, gets to wondering about it, and like Bobby comes in and says, Dad, Mom, where did matter come from? And what's your answer? Well, Bobby, matter's always existed. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Sean Carroll is a podcast scientist guy that I kind of like to listen to. He is an atheist, and he said this about the Big Bang. He said, the Big Bang itself, as predicted by general relativity, is a moment in time, not a location in space. It would not be an explosion of matter into an empty pre-existing void. It would be the beginning of the entire universe with matter smoothly distributed all throughout space all at once. It would be the moment prior to which there were no moments, no space, no time, but the bang itself is a mystery. We shouldn't think of it as the singularity at the beginning of time. It's a label for a moment in time that we currently don't understand. Well, that makes perfect sense, right? Why is there something rather than nothing? And we stand at a mystery when we talk about beginnings. So the wonderful thing is that we have this Bible, and by the way, Genesis 1 and 2 is an ancient text. It teaches us wonderful things, but if you try to force 21st century science onto this ancient text, you do two things. You distort the text and you distort science. So I suggest that we learn to read this text in its ancient context, but then allow it to live and breathe in this 21st century. So as we go through Genesis 1 and 2, I'll be attempting to raise questions, not answer all your questions, but also to bring out some of the things that I think are beautiful that we need to cling to, hold to, walk in, and believe in. All right? So, Genesis 1 opens up with this classic statement. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the Hebrew, Bereshit bara Elohim va'et hashamim va'yet haaretz. Does anybody know Hebrew better than me? I stumble on my pronunciations there, but that's the first opening verse out of the Hebrew text. And what's fascinating is that, notice, the very next verse talks about something, not nothing. There's some people who have said that, like, oh, well, God created everything out of nothing, but actually, the one ancient text that we have doesn't say that. And one of my favorite translators of the Hebrew, Robert Alter, who's still living, is one of my favorite Hebrew scholars, and he's also an English scholar, taught at Berkeley for years, and he translated the whole of the Hebrew Bible, Robert Alter. He started out translating this because the bait, bereshit, that b sound, is the in, or could be a temporal bait, when. So when God created the heavens and the earth. And then the second verse says this: the earth was formless and empty. Now that's not nothing, that's something. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Formless and empty. Formless and empty. The Hebrew is tohu vabohu. It rhymes. Formless and empty. Tohu vabohu. And there's this sort of picture of this primordial chaos with the waters and the deep. And that's the words for these things could even correspond to some of the ancient mysteries to this primordial chaos. And then all of this primordial chaos is going on. What is it? It's something. Who knows what? It's that prebiotic soup before the Big Bang. Who knows? It's a mystery, right? It's a beautiful mystery. It's a wonderful mystery to ponder and think as we think about, like, why is there anything rather than nothing? And then how is it that we consider and think about this and contemplate this? It's kind of an amazing thing. And so there's this primordial chaos and the waters and the deep. But then what's there? At the very beginning, something hovering. Hovering. This word for hovering is like wings flapping. The Spirit is hovering. The creativity, the energy, the mystery, the beauty of the Spirit flapping her wings. By the way, Spirit's always feminine. Flapping her wings over this primordial chaos. Guess what? When Jesus was baptized, he came up out of the waters, and what descended? Representing what? The Spirit. And what was that dove doing? Flapping its wings, hovering. The same concept. Creation, new creation, ongoing creativity. The Spirit hovering, creating, breathing life, creating new. Out of the old comes new. There's ever creation going on. From the very beginning, creativity is mixed in the very heart of this universe. Then it begins to unfold this 6-day creation and then a 7-day rest. And I want to show you the Hebrew structure of these first chapters of creation, all right? So let's put up the chart. So we've got the primordial chaos. We've got the Spirit hovering. And then day 1, 2, 3 on the left as you're looking at this. By the way, remember what I said? It was tohu vabohu. All right, on the left, day 1, 2, 3 is the tohu, formless. On the right, day 4, 5, and 6 is the vabohu, empty. So what's happening in this structure here is that the Spirit's hovering over the deep, which is tohu vabohu. On the right side, tohu, empty. Day 1, what's going to happen? Formless. Day, what's going to happen? The Spirit's going to bring form to it. So what does the Spirit do? Day 1 separates light from darkness. So all of a sudden there's this chaotic mix, and now the Spirit, the creative God, is going to begin to form. Number 1 day, separating light from darkness. Number 2 day, separating water from sky. Number 3 day, separating land and sea, and then plants begin to emerge. Then you jump over to day 4, and now you got the tohu over here. That's the formless, and so God begins to order and shape by separating things. And then over here on the right, God begins to take the empty, the vabohu, and what? Fill it. Fill it. So what is day 4? God fills, Spirit fills with sun, moon, stars. By the way, it doesn't even say sun and moon, because what's the Egyptian god of the sun? Ra, right? So it just says the greater light and the lesser light. It doesn't even give credence to some of the polytheistic ideas about creation. This is an ancient creation text that highlights Creator God, as opposed to like all of the hundreds of gods in the polytheistic world that had creation stories as well. So when you read this, it's actually set apart from some of the other polytheistic creation stories. And so God is now tohu, ordering, separating, and then vabohu, filling, taking stars, sun, moon, and then day 5. By the way, it's not a 24-hour time scheme. What do you need for 24 hours? How about a sun? What day does the sun pop up? Day 4, right? So don't think about this. You know, the day of the Lord, how many days is the day of the Lord? It's like, yeah, so don't get stuck on like scientific, like this is an ancient text that teaches us really beautiful stuff. So day 4, sun, moon, stars. Day 5, fish and birds. And then what does it say about the fish and birds? You're supposed to multiply. And what is that really about? It's co-creating with the Creator of all things, the Spirit hovering and God creating. And now all of a sudden, hey, as creation, you create. In fact, you join with the God of the universe in co-creating everything, all things. We're participants in the creativity of this God. And then day 6, animals and humans, and again, multiply, co-create. Now, what's cool about this whole thing is that this is poetry. I've translated this whole first couple of chapters of the Hebrew Bible, and it's Hebrew poetry, high poetic prose. There's rhythm to it, tohu, vabohu, and there's all of this poetry. It's like God is singing creation, and it's this beautiful rhythm of creation that is at the heartbeat of every single one of us who are in this creation called to co-create with this Spirit hovering and the God of creation. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. One of my friends that I have bicycled with thousands and thousands of miles, literally, is, I think he wouldn't say this, but I think he's one of my smartest friends. Not that we're smart when we're out riding, like yesterday we're doing 60 miles in gravel and we're suffering and getting overheated, exhausted, and all that kind of stuff. But, if you cycle thousands of miles with somebody, it's amazing how many topics you can cover. Anybody ever see Good Will Hunting? You remember when Ben Affleck calls Matt my wicked smart friend? Well, I want to introduce you to my wicked smart friend, okay? This is Tim Place, and I'm sorry, Tim, I just had to do this. And so one day, so Tim actually takes music, puts it into mathematical formulas, and then programs stuff. And I remember one time he was telling me, you can make music into math formulas. And I'd be like, really? Like all sound, all music can be put into math formulas? And my brain just got to think about like music is hardwired into the universe by the Spirit hovering in the Creator. And so Tim's going to come up and explain this to us. But I told him, you got to do it for Fred, for like music, math, dummy for Fred stuff, okay? So Tim, this is my friend Tim Place, all right? Welcome, Tim, just for a minute. He's going to give us a quick...
Don't clap yet. Yeah, it was quite the intro. I mean, usually we're out talking about like vampires or something. So Fred asked me to come up and talk about this stuff with all the mathematics. And the first thing I thought of was high school math class. And in high school math class, I don't know. Anybody enjoy high school math? I did. Fred did. Well, I didn't. I was like, what are we doing here? Because it's especially like, so for example, like trigonometry, there's like, so it has this basis where there's like and there's these triangles, and there's this ancient guy from the Greek Empire, Pythagoras, right? And so like a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and this hypotenuse, and like, I don't know, how many of you use that? I mean, maybe occasionally. Yeah, well, great. We got a couple people that actually use that. And then you go further into trigonometry and you get into like cosine and the sine. It's like this relationship between the different sides of the triangle. And how many people use sines and cosines all the time? The same person. That's great. But it's just like, I'm in high school and I'm just like, is this fun for anybody? And then, so anyway, you go to college and you get to the next level of trigonometry. And you start getting into more of this math, and it's like, okay, well, we've got these triangles, right? And maybe the professor's really excited. It's like a triangle, and you can fit the triangle inside of a circle. And then, like the hypotenuse, which is the long side of the triangle, the hypotenuse could be the radius, and then you could set the radius so that it's a length of 1. And I'm just like, is this any more fun? I'm just like. Why does this matter? But what they didn't tell me in high school or in college is that you can animate all of this. So you could take that hypotenuse, let's say you had this big circle and you got this side of this triangle, and you could it could start moving. And as it's moving around, then all of a sudden the sides of the triangle are changing shape. So when it's like this, then the height of the triangle is 0, and then gradually the height of the triangle is 1, and it goes back to 0. And it starts moving around. And then you could have, actually, is there this first one? So here, I didn't have time to modify this to show the triangles that would be formed by all these, but you can have multiple of these circles with their triangles, and they're all moving around, and they're all in this relationship to each other. So in this particular example, the first one is moving around. Every time it moves around, the yellowish one next to it's moving around 2 times, and the green one's moving around 3 times. So they're all moving at these speeds that are related to each other. So we have all these circles, and all of these, we call them, it says a list of phasors here, so you can consider the phasor like this thing that's sweeping around. And then just imagine these triangles where the lengths of the sides of the triangles are changing constantly. So what we just discovered here and what you're looking at, that's music. You're all following, right? Everybody's got that? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a big leap to figure that out. So let's just park that idea for a second and talk about what's going on right now while I'm talking. So I'm talking, and when I talk, there's vibrations in my vocal cords, and the air is fluctuating like this. And then those particles are going into this microphone right here. There's going to be, I don't know what kind of microphone it is. There's either going to be 1 or 2 little metal discs in there, and they're going to be fluctuating, and that's going to create an electrical charge. The electrical charge is going to go through this cable back there through some equipment, and then it's going to measure the electrical charge. Anyway, eventually it's all going to come back through electrical charge into the speaker, and then those speakers are going to start moving like this to push the air, to push and pull the air. And so when they do that, the electrical charges in the cable or the numbers that are in the digital mixing console back there are going to form some things that are like sound waves. And it might look like something like you'd see at the hospital. For example, when you see like the reading from your heart. So if we go to the next image, we can see an example here of what might be a sound wave. And so what we have on the left is we have those circles. And we just added those circles all together, like added like plus, old-fashioned math. And then, so at each instant in time, as it moves through time and all those circles are animated and added together, they make those circles. And if we take that line, you see, it draws this shape. So what we're seeing here, so one of those circles going around would make a sine wave, which is just this pure ramp like this. Nobody wants to listen to a sine wave. It's crazy making. It sounds horrible. But all the sounds that we tend to hear that we like are made up of multiple sine waves. And so this particular shape is made up of 5 sine waves. And these 5 sine waves are all related. They're all multiples of the speed that the first one's moving. And so the speeds that we're talking about for like a violin tuning an orchestra, it's going to be, this whole thing would be happening 440 times a second. Wow. And so that means that the second sine wave would be going around 880 times a second, and the third one would be going around 1760 times a second, etc. And if we had these sine waves and they weren't related and we just had an infinite number of them, anybody know what that would sound like? Noise. It'd be white noise. So this is how sound works, but actually music works the same way too. And Pythagoras, that same guy that discovered the relationships with the triangles and the circles and everything else, he also documented and experimented and discovered the ratio of sounds and their frequencies. So he discovered what is the basis of modern harmony in music. And so you have a frequency, and then if you have a simple ratio like 2-to-1 between the frequencies, that's an octave. Or if you had a relationship of 3-to-2, that's what we would call a perfect fifth, which would be like the difference between a C and a G on a piano or a guitar. So all that harmony and all that music is related to the same phenomenon. This sound is all related to, which is related to all this like this crazy math that I didn't think mattered in high school. And anyway, I don't know. Is that you have a lot of time to talk? I could talk about this all day long, so I'm going to just call that.
You remember we did that one 13-hour ride together? Yeah. Anyway. Which one, right? So, you can take sound and put it into mathematical formulas. All sound can be put into mathematical formulas. And I'm thinking about this creation story and how I like to mash up, God and faith and science and all these things. And I'm just thinking like, there's this amazing primordial chaos of white noise. I don't know what else is mixed into there, right? There's something, not nothing. And then the Spirit hovers and God begins to sing. Think of God singing creation. And then we pick up on those rhythms. And guess what? Every one of you has inside of you creativity. I think we're most in harmony with our spirituality when we're creating. I used to think only musicians and actors were creative. But several years ago, I ran across a little simple book by Austin Kleon. I'd recommend it to everybody, Steal Like an Artist. And it's illustrated. It's almost like reading a cartoon book. I promise every one of you can get through it, even if you don't like to read books. And it really, like all of a sudden I realized, whoa, I'm creative. And I began to nurture my creativity. As another great little book I'd recommend, The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron. If you've not checked this, it's like a guide to help bring out your creativity. And I want to encourage you that when you're creating, when you're doing what you love, when you're in flow, doing what you let's say you can take an old car engine and work on it and then make it hum. Whew. And then when that engine's humming, you're like going, oh, baby. You can feel the creative juices, like you want to work on another one, all right? And, some of you who are musicians and artists and writers and thinkers, it's a beautiful thing. What good artists understand, says Austin Kleon, is that nothing comes from nowhere. All creative work builds on what came before. Nothing is completely original. Every new idea is just a mashup or a remix of one or more previous idea. Have you ever listened to a good DJ who does mix and matchups and like they just pull? Well, all of us take inputs in from all of our life, all of our history, all of our talents, all of our skills, all of our loves, and then we're able to mix and mash that and then create something beautiful for this world, for people to experience. A kind word, a beautiful sonnet, a kindness to show to people who are on the edges, marginalized. The beauty of love. Think about when you're at your spirituality at its zenith, you're probably creating, remixing, teaching, building, writing, painting, dreaming, hiking, loving, singing, rapping, healing, praying. Even when we suffer, the chaos that suffering brings, there's still some music. Anybody ever listen to some dark music and you find that it makes you feel lifted? Isn't that weird? It's crazy, isn't it? How even in our darkest moments, there's still music. There's still creativity. There's still the Spirit hovering. And something wants to emerge out of that that's beautiful, that's lovely. And that's why you're here, to contribute to the beauty and the creativity. You are a co-creator with God, made to display beauty, love, generosity, creativity for this planet, for God, and for each other. We're called to this. It's in us. We're made for this. I'm going to ask Jennifer and Clifford to come up and just share a song with us that I love. It's written, I think, by a guy named Michael Gungor and his wife. Yeah, so let's meditate on this thought of creativity and how God has made you as a creative person.